For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, because I know some of you like the visuals, if it looks like I've been crying or I look like shit, it's because I do look like shit, because I just spent an hour on the phone ugly crying to Dan. And we're just going to go straight into this week's episode, just straight into this recording, because last week we spoke a lot about what it is I need to do to kind of come back up to baseline and the steps I need to take, and, you know, figuring out like a real recovery plan at every step of the way of my own journey, because it doesn't exist at the moment, right? There's no blueprint for this part of my journey. So I guess my life is becoming, this next part of my life is becoming another blueprint. And I'm having to make a lot of decisions at the moment that are really scary. They're really, really scary decisions. They're big boy decisions. Do you know what I mean? They're decisions where sometimes you feel like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? Big life changes and life choices. And you're like, I need to make these decisions, but I don't know what the outcome is going to be. Making decisions and almost just trusting the process and trusting that it some way, somehow will work is absolutely terrifying for me right now. I'm fucking shit scared, to be honest with you. I want to move into the next stage of my life. There's so much that I want to do. Last week, for those of you who listened, you would know that I made I said, this week I'm going to take rest for the first week of the podcast. All I'm going to do is rest. And I was like, I don't actually know how to rest. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to try. And funnily enough, it turned out that really the rest that I needed was mental. It was to give myself a break and to stop judging myself and to stop being so harsh on myself for the way that I feel, for the person that I am, to really work through that shame. Because the shame, I've always felt shame, right, for a lot of many different things. And I know that it's deep rooted in my childhood. And it was definitely given to me by my dad, who was just not a nice person. I mean, I don't know why I'm sugarcoating it. He was a fucking horrible person to us growing up. And as a really young child, from a really young age, the shame became a part of who I was. It was like, became inherent. And the thing about shame is, shame makes you feel like everything is wrong because of the person that you are. Right, you're a bad person, and it's not because bad things are happening to you. Bad things are happening because of who you are. That's really the best way that I can describe how shame affects me. Let me know in the DMs, yeah, because so many of you have messaged me the past week, just with such amazing feedback from the first episode. So let me know in the DMs, how does shame affect you? Do you relate to me saying that shame feels like bad things happen because I'm a bad person? Not because I'm being subjected to bad things, if that makes sense. When the reality is, I'm being subjected to bad things. It's not because I'm a bad person. It's because there are really shitty people in the world that are cruel and evil, and they do bad things to other people. So the break that I really needed to give myself, the rest that I really needed to give myself, was mentally. Was to stop judging myself, or to try and stop judging myself, to come to this balance of where it's okay for me to feel how I feel, to have the thoughts that I have, and they just are, just to let them be. And on the weekend, we went to Dan's. Didn't take my laptop, didn't really do much work other than posting content on socials, which is work, by the way. Posting content on socials is 100% work to me. Over the weekend, what I realized was, because I gave my brain a rest, I was able to start thinking about this next step in my life, this next chapter, what I want it to look like, how I can shape my own happiness. Because we're all in charge of that, right? And everyone always says, you're in charge of your own happiness, you're in charge of your own happiness, but no one actually ever says what it is that you need to do in order to create your own happiness. And sometimes that's where we get stuck, because you're like, I'm so unhappy. I'm not happy with my life state. I'm not happy with the way things are. And I want it to change. I just don't know how. I don't know what it is I need to do to create a life that works for me and that I'm happy in. And that's what I was thinking about over the weekend. Like, how am I going to do this? Like, where am I going to start? Like, I want to do so many things, both professionally and personally, and I just don't know where to begin. And was thinking about it over the weekend, and I realized that one of the main things that I'm really unhappy about at the moment is the fact that I'm not able to dedicate my time like full force, full steam ahead to LPTMS because there's no income into the CIC. There's no steady income into the CIC. So I can't give up my day job and volunteer for my company, for my business, because who would do that? That just makes absolutely no sense financially. I've got bills to pay. I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got a child. I can't do that, right? And so the next step of that thinking was, okay, well, how am I going to make it happen? If I've identified now what's going to make me happy is working in LPTMS full time and actually getting paid for it. If I've identified that, what are the steps that I need to take to make that happen? What is the process? And it's definitely not something that's taught. 100%. This stuff is not taught anywhere, right? How you make that transition from working like, I guess like a 9-to-5 corporate job, even though I am self-employed in my 9-to-5 anyway, but no one really shows that transition. Everyone thinks everything happens overnight or in a vacuum, and that's not true at all. There is a process to this. And so over the weekend, having these thoughts, I thought, you know what? I need to make the commitment to myself and to LBTMS to like transition into this role full time, but get paid for it. Because the reality is at the moment, as I said in last week's podcast, is the work that I'm doing is for free. 99% of it has been for free. And I don't want that anymore. I am worth more than doing things for free. I'm worth more than just, doing things on behalf of the community. And whilst this is a really fulfilling and a very, very privileged role, I also deserve to get paid. I deserve to make this my career full time. But if I don't value myself financially in that way, because money is energy, right? If I don't value myself financially in that way, that I'm not worth being paid for what I'm doing, I'm never going to be happy. I'm never going to be able to transition into LTMS full time to do what it is that I love doing. And it's funny because I think a lot of my money mindset, again, is shrouded in shame. In the past, I've not always been the best with money management, because we weren't taught money management skills growing up at all, especially when you grow up in poverty or on the breadline. For those of us who came from council estates, who came from the hoods, who came from the blocks, you weren't taught money management because you were living hand to mouth. Financially, all our parents were doing was just getting by. What did they have to teach us? But I think what happened was because I wasn't taught those skills from a young age, then I didn't know where to turn to. I didn't know who to look to, who was successful financially and not necessarily wealthy, but just basic financial skills on how to manage household bills and how to manage your salaries, how to split it up into a budget, all of that, right? I was never taught that growing up. I just watched my mum struggle trying to make ends meet. And that's all I knew. For the longest time, I've had that struggle money mindset. That's what we're going to call it now. We're going to call it struggle money mindset. And maybe not everyone will understand, but those of you who get it, you'll get it. Struggle money mindset. And I really realized it over the weekend again. So this weekend was clearly quite profound for me. I realized it again over the weekend because I took Bella to buy trainers and she needed 2 pairs, one just for like home and going out and one for PE. Now we went into JD and I said to Bella, you can pick any trainers you want, right? And she went and picked literally like a cheap pair of Pumas. They were on sale for like 30 quid. And I saw them and immediately I was like, oh God, why she pick those? Why she pick those? And I remember looking at Dan, I was like, all the trainers, and she's gone and picked like a basic pair of Pumas. Oh my God. Because in my head, that struggle money mindset is like the pinnacle of letting people know you're financially stable is having name brand stuff. I know there's going to be a lot of people listening to this that really will be able to identify with that. And that is what I will call struggle money mindset. Like, you have to prove to people that you've got name brand things in order to seem financially stable. Because growing up where money was really difficult and I watched my mum struggle, I would go to school and I would see my friends with like Nike trainers and Pandora bracelets and Tiffany bracelets. And for me, I used to look at my friends who had that and be like, oh my God, look, their family's really successful. And that's the struggle money mindset that I have, that I guess associate some form of financial success with aesthetics, which is crazy because I'm not even one who's into brands. I don't give a fuck. Like, you won't catch me with designer clothes or bags. I just don't care. But yet when it came to Bella, there was a lot of shame attached to my style of parenting financially when she picked those trainers. I promise you I'm going somewhere with this, right? Because I thought, oh my God, people are going to look at her and they're going to be like, why is she wearing cheap trainers? That was my mindset when she picked the trainers. It was about how it was going to reflect on me. And I wasn't thinking about how she felt when she picked those trainers. Especially, which is now crazy when I've broken this down and I've been able to process it, especially as, you know, being a child who has sensory processing challenges, I wasn't thinking, you know what, I know how hard it is for us to find clothing and shoes for Bella that really work for her. I should have thought, she's happy. These will make her happy. She'll be comfortable. She'll be confident in them. You know, she won't just wear them once and then be like, Mum, I don't want them, because that's happened a lot, believe me. Instead, I was thinking, oh my God, people are going to think I'm a shit mum because I didn't buy her Nike trainers. Because I didn't buy her a pair of trainers that are worth £100. I really had to check myself after that. Really had to check myself and be like, your money mindset is awful. The way you value yourself and your finances and the way you make money is not where it needs to be. Because how can I, on one hand, be basically working for free? And okay, I know a lot of times when you start out, especially in business, entrepreneurship, and especially when you're doing something as big as this, you do a lot of free work because you've got to create connections, you know, you network. I get that. I know that a lot of that is needed to begin with. So how can I, on one hand, be doing a lot of this free work, but then also expect myself to just willingly buy £100 pair of trainers because I don't want people to think I'm struggling? Does that even make sense? Because even as I'm saying it now, even though I've had time and space to process it, I'm thinking like, how have I carried this mindset my whole life? I'm 34. I've had the poorest relationship with money and finances because of the way that I grew up. But I've carried this money mindset for 34 years and it's not been healthy. And it's definitely time that it changes for me, 100%. Bella choosing those £30 pair of Puma trainers were not about me, they were about her. In that moment, in hindsight, when I look back, I should have thought, oh my God, I'm so happy that my daughter's been able to find a pair of trainers. It doesn't matter what trainers they are, as long as she's comfortable and as long as she's going to wear them and they make her happy, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what other people think when she's wearing them. I bought Bella Nike trainers last year in April. I think like 80, 90 quid. She wore them 3 times and said, I don't like them. And then I was resentful because I'd spent the money, but she didn't want to wear them. And I've hoarded the trainers. They're in my shoe cupboard. I won't give them up. Maybe I should. Maybe after this podcast, I might put them on Vinted or something. But I was resentful. But how dare I be resentful? How dare I have that, you know, pattern, that thinking pattern of, I spent 80, 90 pounds on these trainers and you only wore them 3 times. It's not her fault. She's a fucking kid. All she wants is she just wants to feel comfortable in her own skin and her body with what she wears. I don't have the right to spend that money and then be resentful if she doesn't like it. So I've had to do a lot of really checking myself on the relationship that I have with money and the way that I guess I view myself, or how I think other people view me, because a lot of this is a projection of myself, of the shame that I carry. And I've really had the space this week to work through what it is I need financially going forward. If I'm going to make LPTMS work full time, what am I going to do in my own personal development to make that a reality? And people have told me this for so long now, but the starting point really is the mindset that I am worthy of being paid for the work that I do. I'm worthy of doing this job full time. I'm worthy of making this a career. And everything can happen like simultaneously. Everything can be true. Like, I love this job. I love what I do. I am volunteering for my company at the moment. I don't get paid for it, but I do deserve to be paid for it. I can love what I do. It can help and change and save lives, and I can still get paid for it. And because there will always be community work involved with what I do anyway, that's the whole point of LPTMS, right? But without an actual income, I cannot give LPTMS what it needs. And that all has to, when you unpick it and you unravel all the layers, that all starts with me personally. So I think that maybe the next step in the next week, what I do is keep on giving myself that break first and foremost, because that's really worked. That rest in my brain mentally has really, really worked. But I think the next thing that I need to do in the next week between now and the next recording is to be honest with myself, to give myself that honesty without judgment, and to really allow my needs to come forward and to be realistic about them. To say, okay, we figured it out. We know what we want. Stop acting like you don't deserve this. Stop acting like good things are not meant for you. Stop acting like this isn't what you really want. I think a lot of the times people will say like, oh, I don't want to be rich. Just want to be stable enough. No, I want to. I want to be really comfortable financially, more than comfortable financially. And a lot of times we're scared to say it. People are scared to say, I want to be rich, because it sounds greedy, it sounds selfish. But if I don't say that, and if I don't accept that that is really what I want in my life, nothing's ever going to happen. I'm going to continue this cycle of making myself miserable because I'm not putting myself and my needs first. And so whilst, the trainers might seem really trivial, actually the root of why I was feeling the way I was feeling is all tied up to who I am as a person, both professionally and personally. So that was a really interesting lesson for me to say, okay, I've acknowledged this, and I've acknowledged this about me, and I'm aware that this is a thing. What am I going to do now to change this, to better myself? And I think a lot of the times we get so wrapped up in how other people view us that we never stop to just ask ourselves what we need. That's been a big, big, massive thing for me. Like, I'm always thinking, I'm doing this work, and I'm basically working on behalf of my community, and I've built a platform of 21,000 survivors. Along with all the work I've done has come a lot of public recognition, having this big platform across social media. And sometimes I used to think like, oh God, I don't want people to think that I'm taking advantage of the fact that I'm sharing survivor stories. I don't want it to seem like the success is coming off the back of survivors. And because I had that thinking, I immersed myself into any free work that I possibly could for the community to like prove a point, so that people didn't judge me the way that I thought they were going to judge me. But why was I so concerned? Why do I care if people think that? Like, there are a very, very small number of people who are out here doing the work that I'm doing. So why am I concerned with anyone who has negative, non-constructive opinions or thoughts about me? Why? Where does that come from? I don't have the answer to that, but it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And I think now that I've acknowledged that I was, I guess, afraid of people thinking that about me, I realized why I was immersing myself in all of this free work, which essentially in the long run has brought me to this point of unhappiness. And it's not the work that makes me unhappy. It's me. It's my mindset that makes me unhappy. It's this exhausting mindset, this roller coaster, this hamster wheel that I put myself through mentally by constantly worrying about how I'm going to be portrayed, how I'm going to be perceived, how does the world perceive me? Am I good enough? I need everyone to validate me. I need to be affirmed by everybody. That I never stopped to think about what I need. I didn't put myself at the center. I put everyone else at the center of what I was doing when it should have been me. And even saying that out loud right now, I'm like, oh gosh, oh, this sounds so selfish. That sounds so selfish, Lejla. But is it selfish? I don't know. Is it selfish to put yourself first? I give this advice every day. For those of you who interact with me on Insta, you'll know I say this advice to everyone every day. Put yourself first. It is not selfish for you to do so. You need to put yourself. I say this every day to other people. I don't take my own advice. You have to put yourself first. You have to fill up your own cup. If you don't fill up your own cup, put your own gas mask on. How can you help other people? And yet, am I listening to my own advice? Am I fuck? Instead, I've just avoided. That's what's happened. I've just avoided my needs and buried my head in the sand for fear of acknowledging who I am, for fear of acknowledging all the success that I've first and foremost, I've created it. Everything that has happened at LBTMS has happened because of me. I've created that success, right? And I need to acknowledge that. The more that I start thinking, oh, people are going to judge me and they're going to think like, I'm only successful because X, Y, Z. No, bullshit. Because if it wasn't for me, this work wouldn't exist. That's straight up facts. Before Lejla Please told my story, no one was even talking about domestic abuse the way that we now talk about domestic abuse. And now, like, I look all over social media, people making videos about gaslighting, trauma bonding, and, all different forms of abuse. And I think I was doing that 3 years ago when nobody was doing it. You couldn't find videos on social media back then about what gaslighting was. They were real, and they still are. They're there. They're resources for women. They're real educational resources. And I think I've been looking at the work that I've been doing, not in the wrong way. And I think I've needed to change my perspective is what I'm trying to say. And that is what I've been doing in the last week, is changing my perspective. The vision, the goal doesn't change, but the plan will. I mean, it already has. I've already started to make moves to, for a different strategy, a different plan. I hate using the word strategy because I'm not a strategist, but I needed a different plan. And that's what I'm working on now. Because what I was doing wasn't taking me where I needed to go. And so now we've got a completely different plan about how we're going to create the big LPTMS collective recovery for a community our size. Don't change the goal or the vision. Change perspective on your plan. That's what I'm learning right now. And whilst all my thoughts might seem here, there, and everywhere, there for me, unraveling all of these emotions and these thoughts really always helps me get to the it. Because I never know what it is until I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's it. And everything I've had to really be realistic with myself and have these deep conversations with myself in the last week has brought me to that. Change the plan, not the goal. The plan is we're going to work on me. We're going to put me first. We're going to invest in our own development professionally and personally. And we're going to make real commitments. And on Instagram the other day, I said that one of my biggest commitments is that between January and October next year, I'm going to be transitioning into LBTMS full time. And between now and January, I'm going to be working on how I do that. Part of me is excited. Part of me is shit scared. But part of me is also a bit relieved, because I'm finally starting to see that all these skills I've built with LPTMS are transferable, and I can take up work in violence against women and girls. I can take up work in the film and documentary industry, all thanks to what I've been doing in the last 3 years. And for me, outside of working in violence against women and girls, I love creating content. That's how this whole thing started. That's one of my biggest passions as well, is directing, coming up with content ideas, new concepts. I fucking love that shit. Like, for those of you who have filmed on set with me, like, I'm alive when I'm on set. Like, I am in the zone, like in my bag, as the cool kids say on TikTok. And I really want to make that a part of my life. And this is what I mean. I'm having to change my perspective and my plan, because why am I only doing things that don't make me happy or don't make me 100% happy? I've got all these other things, all these other skills that are going for me that I can utilize. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in the next stage professionally. And I do realize that the majority of the talk right now has been about professional development, and I'm still avoiding my personal development. I'm still being avoidant on what it is I need to do to develop personally. Because, like, yes, okay, we've established that we need rest. We've established there are things like money mindset that I definitely need working on for, first of all, personally, so that it does help me in my business and professionally. But what's the next step? What comes after rest? Once I'm rested and I feel ready and raring to go, what next? Do I now start doing things that I love doing that have got nothing to do with my work? That have got nothing to do with LPTMS? I don't actually know what those things are. So maybe what next is I need to figure it out, try new things, take up new hobbies. I don't even know if I've got time for a hobby. I should make time. If my friend should say to me, these are non-negotiables, Lejla. You need to make time for these. These are non-negotiables. You prioritize them. You don't make time for them. You prioritize them, because they are non-negotiables. And that's where I think that's what I'm missing in my life. I'm missing those non-negotiables. I'm missing those things that keep me alive outside of my work that I also prioritize. Because right now there really isn't much of a balance in terms of what I do that are separate to outside of LPTMS. What's next? What do I do now that doesn't involve that? What do I do? Take up pottery? I don't know. Clay pigeon shooting? Maybe I just need to explore it. This is one of those moments where I don't have the answers, so I just need to ask the questions to myself instead. What do I think will make me happy outside of LPTMS? What is going to get me going? Maybe that's what I'll do for the next week. Ask myself those questions, come up with ideas, and see what happens. See where that takes us. So, I think I'm going to end this week's episode here. And I just wanted to do a big shout out and just to say thank you to those of you who have messaged me with your feedback of the first episode, and just to say how relatable it was. And that really means a lot to me, because I did not start this for numbers. I did not start this with the intention, oh my God, I'm going to make it go viral. I started this because this is a lifeline for me, and it's becoming part of my toolbox, part of my own survival guide. It's like my own journal, except I don't write it down. I talk it out, because that's why I'm a verbal processor. You couldn't get me to sit down and journal for shit. You just couldn't. I couldn't write it down. I get bored really easily. But doing this really, really helps me process my emotions and my thoughts. And I'm just grateful for those of you who have tuned in already. You're getting like Lejla's personal journal here. And I really hope that as this progresses, the podcast goes along and I share this part of my life more, that it helps and that it too becomes part of your survival guide and your toolbox. Because that's always been the premise of LPTMS, is that my life became other people's survival guide. It became the blueprint of how other women recover. And I'm really fucking proud of that. Above everything, I'm really, really proud of the legacy that I've created so far with Lejla. Please tell my story. So tune into next week's episode. We don't know what we're going to talk about. We never really know what we're going to talk about until I just pick up the mic and just verbal diarrhea everything. So yeah, tune in next week.